All right, we're going live again here. And the reason we started over is because I realized that my microphone was not working. Somebody finally dropped a message in the chat. And sure enough, I checked the settings and yep, the microphone was not working. So this is going to be take two. Fortunately, we were only about 8 minutes into the stream. So I don't think it's going to be a great loss. Actually, I'm going to write in the chat here. Please let me know if the audio sounds good. Thanks. Okay. So, and also I won't be looking at the chat window all the time. The reason is because if I look in the YouTube studio, it's like a 10-second delay on the video and it's kind of weird. So I'm using OBS Studio, which is a free broadcasting software for those of you who want to geek out a little bit. It's a great software. I like it. So, but I don't have a lot of experience using it to broadcast on YouTube. So we're going to see how this goes. This will be a little bit experimental. So Dominator XX42, how you doing? Says it sounds fine. And it looks like we have an excellent connection. Let's hope it goes. So I'm just going to run with it. And I'll just, like I said, I'll check the chat every once in a while, just see how we're doing. So appreciate that. So today's live stream is very spontaneous on my part, and we're going to talk about 3 things that ostensibly are not connected to each other, but actually I think they are, at least in my experience. And they are naps, books, and clients. And this is all going to be in the context of things that I've been learning and experiencing recently that I think could be valuable for you, certainly for the right person. And I'm fully cognizant that some people will come on and say, what the heck do these things have to do with each other? And that's fine. It's not necessarily going to resonate with everyone. But if you stick with me, you'll see what the interconnection is. And also, by the way, this is a coffee chat. You may or may not like coffee. I do. So I'll be drinking some coffee during this live stream. And yep, we're going to talk about it. So this is, again, all based on my recent experience. And one of the things that I've learned as part of the art and science of living life, living a good life, is that small things make a big difference, can make a big difference when we have the right perspective about them. So that's kind of the spirit of what I'm getting at here. And yeah, I really want to just share this with you because I know that if, for the right person, this could be very meaningful, even though it could sound a little bit trivial. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about naps, first of all. Naps have been proven to be a real lifesaver for me, especially lately. And I'll share more about that in a second. What's interesting about naps is, like a lot of things in life, people have a lot of preconceived, even I would say pre-programmed ideas about naps. I'll give you an example. You might hear someone say, or you may think this, oh, I can't nap. Some people can nap, but I can't fall asleep quickly, on demand. Okay, so that's one I would call limiting belief or preconceived idea about naps. And I'd be curious if that's something that you've thought. Another one, of course, that I hear probably just as much is, I don't want to nap because if I do, I won't be able to fall asleep at night. I will have trouble falling asleep. I'm laughing because now, from my own experience, all of these limiting beliefs, that's what they are. They're kind of ridiculous, but I can understand why people would think that. I can totally get it. I mean, it's understandable. So I'm curious, comment in the chat, what is your experience with, beliefs about, in relationship to napping? Now, for me, naps have ended up being a lifesaver. In fact, just today I took a nap. And I don't really time the naps, but I can tell because I fell asleep listening to kind of a video. So I think that the nap I took was more or less 45 minutes, just as an example. Not that I'm trying to control the amount of time that I sleep, but that was how long it was. And I probably wasn't even deeply asleep the whole time, but that's pretty much how long it lasted, about 45 minutes. Now, for me, napping has been a real lifesaver. Why? If you followed my story at all, you know that I have kind of a chronic, through my entire life, I've had some type of lower back pain related to a congenital defect, something that happened either before I was born or when I was born or shortly after. And unfortunately, for better or for worse, it's just something that I have to basically manage and deal with. And so one of the consequences of that is from time to time, I'm not going to sleep very well. And of course, that's an issue because when I don't sleep well, when anyone doesn't sleep well, when we don't sleep well, it has a material impact on our performance of whatever we're going to do. And not to mention the experience, how we feel about ourselves, about in our bodies, how we experience life. It's almost like there's this kind of it's almost like the glass is fogged over. I guess that's the analogy. It's like the glass of life, the lens with which the eye, the observer, the experiencer is experiencing life through the physical body. It's like it's got this semi-transparent kind of murky overtone to it, and it affects all the senses, and it affects the entire experience. So it's not great to not sleep well, but it's going to happen, and it happens for me. So I'm always looking for strategies and ways to approach that. Now, I am very blessed. Again, I think this is something that anybody can do, but in my case, I've consciously chosen this. I am essentially my own boss. I am the master of how I spend my time on every day, and how I structure my day. So for me to decide to take a nap, with the exception of if I have a commitment, let's say I'm meeting with a client or I have a scheduled commitment, some other logistical issue, with those exceptions, and I think those are reasonable, we all experience that, I can pretty much say to myself, I'm going to take a nap. And I certainly don't need to take a nap and don't feel even the desire to take a nap every day. But let's say I didn't sleep particularly well. That's a day where I'm almost certainly going to take a nap. Not all the time, but it'll, for the most part, it's going to be something that I'm going to decide to do. And the way I time it is, so not to get off on too much of a tangent here, but hey, this is a conversation. So sometimes I'm going to go off on tangents in order to make a point. So if you're the kind of person that you enjoy a little bit of storytelling and you don't mind that, that's great. If you're kind of like, Dave, just get to the point, it may not be for you. But those of you who watch my content, especially over the last, say, year and a half, you know that one of the changes I made in my lifestyle is I now eat principally what's called a carnivore diet. So what that means is I'm pretty much eating a diet which is high in saturated fat, moderate amount of protein, animal fat and protein, and then a very, very small residual amount of carbohydrates, which usually is like an occasional fruit just to treat myself. Maybe once a month I'll actually treat myself to like a proper dessert, but it'll be pretty rare. I don't eat any vegetables. I don't eat any grains, no rice, no beans, none of that, no bread. Again, I might have a piece of bread once a month or so. I mean, we're talking about pretty minimal. And coffee is probably the only plant-based exception to my diet, which is more or less constant. And even there, it's kind of questionable the benefit, the cost, the benefit, cost benefit. So we'll talk. I'm going to put that at the side because this is a coffee chat. I'm going to put that to the side for the minute. But basically, the reason I shared that in the context of napping is I have found that the best time to take a nap is after I eat a meal. So let's say I eat, and I usually only eat like usually two, maybe three big meals a day. But it's usually two big meals, sometimes even just one. So let's say I have a midday meal, and it's going to be pretty filling because it's high in fat and it's protein, and it's going to take an effort. The body's going to digest it. So what the body's going to want to do is like, okay, great, you've eaten. Let's slow down here and let's digest, right? So it's a perfect time to slow down, and I feel that sleepiness coming on, and it's really perfect. Because sometimes I find if I try to take a nap, sometimes I can do it before I have a meal. I'll talk about that in a second. But most of the time, if I time it after eating a meal, it works really well. So what I might do, for example, what I did today is I'll eat my meal, and then I'll kind of feel, how do I feel? How sleepy am I feeling? If I have a certain level of sleepiness, I'm like, great, I'm going to capitalize on that. So I might curl up and read a book until I fall asleep, or I might just lay down immediately. I may or may not put some gentle music on, or I may put like an informative video on, but just very low volume so that I can almost hear what they're saying, but it's not really engaging my consciousness to a level where it's going to keep me awake, So, and what I find, and then what I do to fall asleep, I always lie on my side. That's, for me, that's really the only way I can fall asleep, lying to one side. And I start doing gentle but deep inhalation, exhalation. So I regulate my breathing and I slow it down, but I also deepen it. So I consciously deepen my breath in and out, and I don't worry about whether I can fall asleep or not, because sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's not going to happen, and I'm okay with that, so I don't try to fight it. That's really important. I think sometimes sometimes the reason people struggle with napping is because they're like, oh, I've got to force it. No. Just let it happen naturally. If you're not able to fully fall asleep, and this will happen to me sometimes, but I will feel more relaxed. In other words, sometimes we have what's called micro sleep, where literally how do I explain this? Where literally you might fall asleep just for a few seconds, and then the sound, whether it's the music or whatever you have, may wake you up again. Something may wake you up. So it's kind of like going in and out of consciousness, and that's fine. I find that if I do that for 30 minutes or so, maybe even shorter, maybe longer, when I come out of that, I still feel refreshed. I still feel like I was able to get back some of the, I was able to overcome some of the grogginess of the sleep, the lack of sleep. And that's great. That's all that needed to happen. That's what happened today, for example. So anybody can take a nap. Now, if you've got logistics, what I mean by that is if you're working a job, like let's say you're working in for example, a corporation, like a work environment where you're working within a time, you have a schedule. It's going to be a little more challenging. But I would argue that if you're a resourceful person and you're creative and you're good at building relationships with the people you work with, including whoever your manager or superior, your boss is, then you can make it work, even if you have to structure it in a certain way, right? If you're working from home, it's going to be particularly easy, as many people do. But even if you're working in an office environment or somewhere, you can find time, right? You may have to negotiate that with the people you work with to build in a little bit of time slots. So just keep that in mind. And you may make it flexible. For example, I don't need to nap every day. I use napping when appropriate. I use it when I'm, frankly, on a sleep deficit. When I'm struggling to perform optimally. That's when I'm going to nap. Not necessarily every day. And I'll tell you what, it's delicious. Napping is exquisite. My favorite part of napping is the feeling of coming out of the nap and realizing that it worked. Realizing that it was effective. Realizing that it made a difference. Like, wow, that feels so much better. Even if it was just 15 minutes of sleep. Just realizing the power of it. And it's like, wow, like, I was so groggy before that. Like, I couldn't even have imagined getting on here now and doing this live stream before I took the nap that I took today. Couldn't imagine. Afterwards, it was like the most natural decision ever. It was clear. It just came as an inspiration as I was preparing my cup of coffee and sitting down and contemplating how I was going to use this surplus of energy that I suddenly found for myself. So, yeah, I mean, it's a game changer. So, got a few people going around here in the background. We'll just let them pass by. So, yeah, so napping. So, honestly, if you struggle, if you have a night where you just don't sleep well, and even if that happens to you regularly, as I sometimes experience, try napping. Try napping. Make it work. Be resourceful. Come up with a strategy that whatever your lifestyle, whatever your circumstances is, you can make that happen, right? Makes a big difference. So I wanted to share that. And as we get into the other two aspects of this live stream, it'll start to make sense why these are all connected. So again, I know for some people they're thinking like, what on earth do these things have to do with each other? Just hang tight, hang tight. So that's napping. So now let's talk about books. Let's talk about books and reading books. Similar to napping, reading books is something that I've recently rediscovered because it's not the first time I've taken naps and it's not the first time I've read books. As a kid, I read voraciously, and even as a young adult, it's just at some point it kind of, as a habit, as a kind of a lifestyle habit, for various reasons, I just kind of fell out of reading for a number of years. And part of it was, of course, because I found so much value in watching videos, and I am a very audio-visual person. I create a lot of videos, but I also enjoy consuming a lot of video content. It's a great way to get information and knowledge. It's a great way to learn. It's very interactive. It's very dynamic. It's very artistic, and it engages multiple senses. So it's obvious why why that can happen, especially in the modern information age. But similar to napping, where it's not the first time I've realized the value. I've known about napping and how valuable it is for most of my life, but I kind of, for a while, fell out of the habit. Same thing with reading books. It was something that more recently I was just inspired to do. And on that note, I'm going to share some recent books that I've been reading, and I'd love, if you are watching the live stream, or even if you're watching the replay, I'd love for you to share what are some recent books that you've read that have made a really big difference. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to share with you why I think that you should probably read more than you are, and how and why rediscovering the joy of books, even in this age of video content and multimedia, just reading a good old-fashioned book, or even reading a book on a device like a Kindle or your phone or a tablet or even the computer, although I think less so. At least something handheld, whether it's an actual book or a tablet. It's it's a irreplaceable experience. It's not the same thing as watching a video. Now you can get great knowledge, you can learn great knowledge and gain fantastic insights either way. So it's not like, one is superior to the other. But there's something special about reading, because it allows you to slow down. That's why I sometimes love to read before I take a nap, as a way to, or even at bedtime, just as a way to slow down instead of, energizing video content, which is kind of activating. Read a book. It slows you down because you can read at the pace you want. You can go read fast or you can read slow. Anything in between. It also activates different parts of the mind and the brain because it's not visual, in the sense that you're just reading words on a page, but the images that go with the associated experience or knowledge or concepts or story, you have to imagine them in your own mind. So it's great for cultivating imagination, something that again has been really actively, I would say, diminished and even destroyed in many people today. And part of the reason why the world is the way it is and why society is the way it is because lost my train of thought there because I was going to check the chat. I probably shouldn't have done that. Let me take one step back. I'll get it back here. The point is, and anybody can lose their train of thought, right? So if someone's probably saying, well, there you go, David, you're a victim of modern culture. You lost your train of thought. We lose our train of thought, okay? Books can have a profound influence on us, and some of the greatest knowledge and wisdom is locked up in books that is harder sometimes to find in videos, right? Videos are very in your face, and it's like eye candy and dopamine hits and scrolling through shorts on YouTube, and so forth, which I've even been guilty of, or TikTok style videos. And there's something to be said for going back and quietly reading a book. So let me just share 3 recent books, and then I'll share maybe possibly a couple more books that I haven't necessarily read recently, but they are very powerful, extremely powerful. So one of the most recent books I read is called The Prosperous Coach, and it's by 2 authors, Steve Chandler and Rich Litvin. You can find it very easily. It's still in print. You can buy it from either Amazon or your favorite bookseller, or you can even, I think there's even an audio version. I don't listen to audiobooks that much. I actually read the book, but I'm pretty sure there's an audible version. This was not the first time I read this book, but I was called to read it a second time when I recently, in September, decided to go back into business for myself as a consultant and as a coach. And I'll talk more about that when I talk about clients in the third part of this coffee talk. So I just felt inspired to read this book because I already knew about it, and I kind of got a sense, it's more of an intuition, because I was going back in business for myself, and because I was kind of starting from scratch. I mean, I have many contacts. I have a very large network on LinkedIn, which is a business-oriented social network. But because I had been out of doing business for about 2 years, I was asking myself, what are some strategies, what are some ways that I can approach going back into business that's really going to unlock success and abundance that maybe I wasn't even able to find, in previous times that I had tried, or I had run a business. So it was just very natural that I was drawn back to this book. Maybe it was mentioned somewhere in context. Don't really remember. So I went and got the book again. And I read through it. And sure enough, it was exactly what I needed to hear to make it happen. And now I'm happy to say it's December. So again, I'm not to get ahead of myself, but when I talk about clients and starting a business, I'll share like at least half of, at least a half of or a large part of the success that I've experienced going back into business, kind of starting over and actually enrolling clients and already having been paid thousands of dollars for my work is because of what I learned and relearned from that book. And because I was able to calmly sit down and read the book chapter by chapter and really have the time and space to inculcate these ideas and to kind of take them in at pace, meaning not rushing, not having to keep at pace with a video, but just stop and start. Read a chapter, gain a profound insight. And this is what I love about reading in general. Gain a profound insight and stop, pause. Or pause and then go execute, which is part of what I was doing. As I was reading the book, I was literally taking what I was learning from the book and putting it into practice in my business. And it was so powerful. It was literally like being coached by Rich and Steve. And I even sent Rich, because I'm on his mailing list, I sent him a thank you a few weeks ago. Got a nice reply back from him. But I basically just said, hey, I wanted to thank you because I went back and reread the book. And wow, the insights that I gained, even more than the first time I read it. Because I think, honestly, the first time I read it, I really didn't get it. And that's why sometimes it's good to maybe read a book a second time, if you're called to it. Some books are meant to be read over and over again. Some are, okay, not a big deal. But going back and reading that book just was transformative. And I would say anybody who is either working as a coach of any kind or a consultant even, or even just an individual, service provider of any kind, even if you're not specifically a coach, I think I would recommend that book. I think you will be able to get something out of it. And I think if you do read it, you'll know exactly why I suggested that. Even if, again, you don't position yourself as a coach. That's okay. If you do, I would say it's almost, it's not mandatory, but it would be highly encouraged that you go read that book if you are actually positioning yourself as a coach. Like I would say, like it almost should be expected because it has so much to offer someone in that paradigm. But even if you're not, even if you're just in business for yourself, as some kind of consultant or expert or service provider, you're going to get something out of it. So powerful. And again, what's taught in that book, we can learn that from videos, from interviews, from other things, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing, right? It's kind of that slow down. And I often find that when I read books before I either nap or go to sleep for the night, I find that my mind is in that kind of state. I don't know if it's, alpha waves or delta, or I don't know what the technical term is, but I feel like I'm almost in a state where I'm more receptive to the ideas and they resonate more. Right? So that was the first of 3 books that I've been reading recently that I wanted to just mention. Now, the second book that I've read recently that I want to mention specifically is a book called Puzzling People by Thomas Sheridan. And Thomas is although I've never met Thomas, he and I have something in common, is that we're essentially content creators doing what is called the one great work or the great work. And we're kind of loosely associated with a collective of other content creators who create videos or have created videos and shared videos about natural law, about the occult sciences, and just hidden knowledge in general. So we're kind of in that same sphere. And I kind of came to learn about Thomas's work through other content creators and teachers within that same community, right? And specifically, as part of my work, I came to realize, and I think it was probably Mark Passio who first brought this to my attention and made it very clear to me that this is an important topic, that psychopaths and psychopathy is a real thing, and it's something that's having much more of an impact on the world than most people would even feel comfortable admitting. Essentially, we live in a world where the institutions of the world are essentially psychopathic, if we want to just be straight about it. And I've talked about this in some of my other videos. I created a video called Taxpayers Are Under Mind Control. And you may want to go check it. It's a long form presentation. And I talked about psychopaths. I also talked about it in another one called The True Meaning and Purpose of Government. That's a more recent presentation that I did. In that one, I also went in pretty extensively and talked about my understanding of psychopaths and psychopathy. And a lot of that knowledge was garnered both through what Mark and Thomas and others were teaching, but specifically I found reading the book Puzzling People to be very revealing and very confirming. It was confirming to a lot of my own experiences, even, of interacting with psychopaths and just kind of wondering about that, but not really having a context in the past to really know what I was dealing with. Like just having an intuitive sense that the person I'm dealing with, they aren't like me, but almost like being thrown off balance because it didn't occur to me how different they are in their mentation, how different they are experiencing reality because of that inability to feel anything, to feel even fear, to feel love, to feel joy, to feel, to sense beauty in things. So, it was very revealing. And I felt called to go deeper into it because I wanted to really overstand and understand better what psychopathy really was. And it's curiosity. How can you not be curious when you realize that literally living among us is almost like a subspecies of humanity that is a predator species. And that's their nature. That is who they are. So, it's a fascinating topic. And I think that in the context of psychic self-defense, psychological self-defense, which I've come to realize is as important as physical self-defense, may even be more important in context, because most of our interactions start in the mental realm and then they translate into some kind of physical interaction. So it may be a true statement to say that psychological and psychic self-defense is actually more important than physical. So in that context, understanding, or as I say, overstanding and understanding psychopathy, its true nature, is important. And I found Thomas's book, again, to be very insightful and allowed me to deepen my understanding even beyond what I had already learned from all the video content, from listening to podcasts, and so forth. And to really slow down, and also just to engage in the storytelling, because in the book, Thomas does a great job of describing and helping us relate to psychopathy, mainly through storytelling. So I encourage you to check out that book as well. Honorable mention, because it's in the same topic, so this is kind of like a bonus book that I've also read recently. Excuse me. Got a little bit of an itch. On the same topic, Thomas helped me to become aware of the work of Dr. I think it's Robert Hare. He's the creator of the Psychopathy Checklist. And his book is called Without Conscience. So that was a book I also read. Because again, I wanted to further my understanding, my overstanding of it, and draw into that. Not sure why I got an itch all of a sudden here. Maybe it's an itch to have some coffee. So what I may do is I may link in the comments or in the video description some of these books. So if you guys want to go check them out, which I highly encourage you to do. I know it's kind of an eclectic collection. Then I want to encourage you to do that. So that was the second book plus a bonus because it was related to the same topic. Now the third book that I've been reading, and I'm about halfway done, so not finished, is called The Alabaster Girl by Zan Perrione. I know I may not be pronouncing his name correctly. And it's an incredible book. And I was drawn to this book because many times in my life, I have kind of, just being honest, like asked myself, why have I struggled so much in relationships with women? Like, why do I have this push-pull? I know that there's something more I desire. I know that I'm attracted to women and I want to create relationships with women, but why is there a lot of struggle with that? And then also looking in the world around us, one of the dynamics that we see, unfortunately, is that men are pitted against women. It's not just about me. I mean, if we look at society, if we're honest with ourselves, all of modern society, particularly in the Western or Westernized modern societies, there's a lot of pitting of the genders, men versus women. And you have, forces and counter forces, and you have feminism, but then you have neo-feminism, and then you have MGTOW, men go their own way. You have misogyny, hatred of women, hatred of men, battle of the sexes. It's a mess. It's a mess. And I always felt intuitively that this isn't really how things were meant to be. I mean, here are women that are so beautiful, and yet on the one hand, that beauty is not fully appreciated. On the other hand, me as a guy, being a man and not being a woman, like, how do I relate to all this? And how do I relate to my own struggle with creating relationships? And so this book, which, and I would encourage every man to read, and women can get a lot from it too, although it's obviously written mainly for men, but I think a woman could get a lot out of it, just to see that perspective. But I would say specifically any man of any age, especially young men who have been struggling in any way with dating and relationships and want a fresh perspective, I want to encourage you to go read that book. It's a timeless book. And I think if you give it a shot and, don't go into it with any preconceived notions and just start reading it, you're going to see the incredible wisdom and perspective that Zan brings in that book, The Alabaster Girl. So, and it's such a joy to read. It's that's another thing. Some books are more textbook style, some are more instructional, and so on and so forth. So there are different styles of writing, which then translate into different experiences of reading. But I have to say that this book is much more of a narrative style. It's much more of a draw you into the story. It's very insight driven. It's not a book that I could ever just read back to back because I have to stop sometimes and just take it all in. Like, I find myself stopping maybe almost at every chapter and like, wow, like insight, incredible. Like, that's amazing. That's so simple. Why didn't I think of that? And then, like with all the books that I read, because I always take what I learn and I start to apply it in my life, start to implement it, and start to get results from changing the way I show up in the world and the way I interact. And I can tell you, even small changes can make a really big difference. And again, if you read that book, you'll see what I mean. It's not just, some people might look at it and say, oh, it's just another book about how to pick up women. No, that's not what it's about. Not at all. So if you have a preconceived notion about it, you may want to leave those preconceived notions aside and just give it a shot. So again, I highly recommend any man who wants to be a man of higher value, wants to deepen his relationships with any women in his life, whether it's just a single woman, whether it's the woman he's already married to, or whether he wants to find that kind of relationship, or whether he just wants to have better experience with women in general, read that book. Read that book. So I wanted to share, those are the 3 plus the bonus books that I have been reading recently, and I'll tell you, it's been such a pleasure to get back into reading. It's made such a big difference. I almost kind of kick myself for going such a long time without, continually nurturing and cultivating that habit. But it's okay. It's never too late. It's never too late. Life, I would say, the soul's journey is infinite. So even beyond this lifetime, there's always going to be another opportunity to learn and grow. But, don't ever limit yourself at time. Like, now is the right moment to make a change. So if you haven't been reading a lot and you want to give that a shot, I encourage you to do that. Go explore what's out there. And if you don't want to read the books that I've suggested, go find something that calls your attention. But imagine how much better the world would be if we all spent more time reading. And I want to just mention, without diving too deep, I'll just mention 2 books. I haven't necessarily read these recently, but they are, I think, I would put them on the must-read category for any human being, really. Anyone at all. And really of any age. And I'll just mention them briefly here because I could talk more about them in another video. So the first one is The Kybalion by 3 Initiates, which is essentially a treatise about the 7 hermetic principles of occult sciences, which are basically 7 principles that explain how reality works, and that when we come to understand those principles, and understand is the correct word in this case because we stand under the laws of creation because we're not above them. We can work with them, we can alchemize them and use them to our favor, but we can't disable them or override them. So when we come to understand these 7 principles, and they're very intuitive. When you read, this is one of the beautiful things about learning this knowledge is you'll be able to put it to the test immediately. You'll be able to know whether it's true immediately from your own experience. You'll be able to apply it in your own life, just like I have. But it can give you some real aha moments. And so I want to encourage you to read that book called The Kybalion, Kybalion, by 3 Initiates. And the other book, which is more recent, is a book called The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke, Locke. That's from about 2005. I may or may not be able to get that book in print, but you can definitely download it. And I know there are some audiobook versions as well that some people have been created. Maybe it may or may not be on YouTube. It may be on BitChute, for example. It's a beautiful book that just explains clearly, it helps us to understand our true value, our infinite value as human beings, and the nature of evil, the true nature of evil, and what evil actually is, what it's trying to do, and how it manifests in our world, and what we can do about it. So it's a solutions-oriented approach. It's very simple. It's a very small book. I think it's less than 100 pages, believe it or not, or just about 100 pages. Amazing that such an important topic as the nature of evil and how to end it could be covered in less than 100 pages and in a way that's so readable. I mean, it's shocking to me that I didn't discover this book earlier and that more people haven't discovered it. I think more people are discovering it. But yeah, just go check it out. The End of All Evil by Jeremy Locke. So with that, that's basically what I wanted to share about books. And now I can share about the third topic, which is clients, working with clients. And I see that there aren't a lot of people on the stream, but that's okay. We're going to keep going. Some people may pick this up on the replay, and this is valuable information for the right person. So again, the connection between these three things they are three changes or three things that I've come back to recently, because really that's what it is. I've come back to all three of these recently because I've taken naps, I've read books, and I've had clients in the past. So it's not like it's something new, but these are three things that I've come back to recently that have been having and are having a profound impact on my life and really shifting my perspective about a lot of things and actually reinvigorating my inner sense of joy and appreciation and gratitude for life. And the third thing is working with clients. Working one-on-one with individuals to help them overcome their challenges, to help them grow their business, which is principally what I do. And I have to say that I'm learning as much as I'm teaching in the context of working with clients. I'm as much of a student as I am a teacher. I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about life. I'm learning about how to be a better service provider, how to be a better coach, how to be a more effective consultant, an expert, and the true value. And I'm also learning something very important. And for those of you in particular who, like me, have been or may continue to struggle financially, to struggle to generate enough income, even just to get by, I want you to pay attention to this part, because this is the biggest part. I've realized that by showing up and serving as powerfully as I can in a true and meaningful way, one-on-one with specific clients in a specific context, money becomes no issue. And what I mean by that is I've had more money come into my bank account in the last 3 months, September, October, 4 months, than I did in the previous 2.5 years. Or maybe 2 years, 2 to 2.5 years. Yeah. It's almost like a switch. And you know what? Here's the other thing. It's not just that the money has been coming in to the tune of thousands of dollars at a time, just to be a little more specific, but it actually feels, in terms of being paid, because I've been paid many times. I've gotten a salary. Clients have paid me in the past. I've earned, a different way. Even as a kid, I was earning money selling greeting cards door to door when I was 11. So I'm no stranger to being paid, but I have to say, not just in terms of the size of the payments, but the feeling associated with being paid most recently has been amazing. Like it's almost like the payments are just, it's almost like the universe, I'm trying to think of a way to describe this. It's almost like the payments are the universe or creation or God or however you want to describe it, tipping me and thanking me for showing up and becoming a better person and doing more and contributing more in life and just being more, growing, taking that aspect of life seriously and just cultivating myself and just giving freely without expectation. Because one of the things I did was, and this was a suggestion from someone whose opinion I trust. He said, David, try this. Since you're just getting back into business, I know you want to charge reasonable fees, thousands of dollars for your services, and you will be paid. But because you're kind of new to this, getting back into business, because again, I'm not new to business, but this was essentially a startup because I hadn't been in business for 2 years, so it's almost like starting from scratch. He said, because it's kind of a new endeavor, I want you to do this. This is something that I did a few years ago, and it really made a difference. And he told me what he did was he made a contract with his clients, a few clients, not everyone, the first few clients. He said, I'm going to deliver this service. Just so you know, this service is worth, let's say, $5,000. But I want you to pay whatever you want. And you know what? You don't have to pay me in the beginning. You can pay at the end. You can pay after you've gotten the value. And he did that, and he got paid thousands of dollars. And then eventually, of course, he was able to command upfront fees, as am I. So that's what I did, and I have to say it's been amazing. I enrolled several clients in that structure. Either pay what you want, or another way I did it was pay at the end instead of at the beginning. Because a lot of service providers, rightfully so, they will charge what's called a retainer fee or an upfront fee. And I do that most of the time. But I deferred those in order to, take all the pressure off. And then it was really, at that point, it was just up to me to perform. It's up to me to deliver. And so far, the results, it's early days still, but at least in one case, I've already been paid several $1,000s from one of those clients. And I know that the others are going to deliver that as well. And now I'm in a position where I can start charging upfront fees for my clients because I've got the track record, right? So that's one part. The other aspect of working with clients is it's amazing. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. I love the feeling of helping them become successful. And I love the multidimensional aspect of it. In other words, we're not just dealing with the logistics or the strategy or the nuts and bolts of their business, whatever that is. Yes, that's always a part of it. But it's mostly about the mindset. In fact, it's mostly about the mind, heart, guts, the trinity of consciousness. It's mostly about helping them to align their thoughts, their emotions, and their actions in alignment with whatever it is whatever their true purpose is. And that's actually what's also very exciting to me, or I should say, makes me feel enthusiastic. It's not really exciting. Exciting is not the right word. What gives me a lot of enthusiasm and joy is seeing them thrive because they are tapping into the true reason that they're here, like what they're really meant to do in life, their true purpose. And so I feel like as a coach, my big mission is to help create more freedom in the world. How? By helping people rediscover their true purpose and have the courage to act on that and to take the right actions despite the resistance, despite the negative programming, despite the opposition, which can come in many different forms, and which is often internally ingrained because of the programming, because of the mind control, the programming, the negative beliefs. Thank you, the psychopaths. Thank you, psychopaths, for continuing to propagate your worldview and getting people to believe that they are actually less than they are, when in fact they are of infinite value, as Jeremy Locke reminds us in his book, The End of All Evil. So, it ties back into the principles, right? So, what I've been doing is essentially taking everything I've learned about natural law and the occult sciences and imbuing all of my work with those principles, with my current understanding and application of those principles. And then it just becomes magic. And I'm just getting started. Because like I said, I'm only 4 months into this new endeavor, so it's still early days. And these things are all connected, because by reading these books, I'm able to serve my clients more powerfully. I'm also able to recommend that my clients read the books that I find most valuable. And by taking naps, to tie it all together, I'm also able to serve more powerfully, because if I, for whatever reason, if I don't sleep well or just haven't been well rested, I can use the nap to re-energize myself. I can curl up with a book, gain some insights, and then go back and do great work with my clients and feel confident and certain waking up every day that I don't have to have all the answers, I just have to show up, and as long as I show up, as long as I have a clear roadmap, a blueprint of where I want to go, and I'm a good listener and ask really good questions, then the path is going to present itself. So it's brought me a lot of joy, and I feel like I'm in a very different space. People who have followed my work and the videos I've created over the last couple of years probably will notice a big shift, because I really was limiting myself in many ways by particularly by not reading books, and also just by not engaging in conducting business with people, in serving. And on the one hand, but the other hand, kind of complaining, even like, where's the money? Where's the abundance? Why am I struggling? When it was all from day one, it was a self-imposed struggle. It was always self-imposed. That's the key insight. And all I had to do was shift my perspective and take certain actions that were entirely within my capabilities, and actually not that complicated. And that would unlock the abundance. And that's exactly what happened. And that's what is happening, and what will continue to happen. So I hope that's been inspiring. This has been, I don't know if it's going to be a one-off thing. I honestly don't know. There haven't been a lot of concurrent viewers on the live stream. We'll see if people get a lot of value. If they do, I may come back and do more coffee talks, coffee chats, or this may just be a one-off. But I feel like I've said what I needed to say. I feel like if you watch this and you got value from it, then it was meant for you. So I really appreciate it. I appreciate you showing up, and I will